I've been making a bunch of garb for my son, and I thought it might be a good idea to show you how I do that. And I have now 2 ways of putting in an arm. So I thought I would share that with you. So first step is to measure out the shoulder seam. This is a 1 piece, so I just measure it with a pin. If you have a 2 piece, there will be a seam here. This is not for a person, so this is a tiny version, so I can do it real quick. So it's not to scale. This is your arm. The opening will be here, and this is your underarm gusset. First we do is sew this to that. There needs to be a seam allowance up there. It's a good practice to put your needle in first, down the foot down. And that's the first seam. I'm doing it in 2-color, so it's easier to see what is going on. Step 1. I sewed the underarm gore gusset on. Next is to get the shoulder seam measured out. On both sides. There. So we can line them out well, correctly. Make sure this seam is visible. Of course, if this was full size, I would use way more pins. Add a seam allowance and sew down. So next is you get the arm. And you sew those together. You can start all the way at the top. You see that beginning? So until there. Okay, next step is to sew this to there. So then I look at the fabric under. That is the end of the seam. So that's there. So I want to start my needle there. I want to stop there. And that is one arm. that's, oh, I didn't do this part yet. Of course it has 4 sides. So again, you grab the seam allowance, but this is easier to see now. You put your needle down where you stopped. And then you sew until that spot. I'll do the frame. The other way to put in an arm is to do same first step. Sew this on. Leave a seam allowance because you can go all the way to the bottom. Turn it over. So you're doing 2 seams now at once, both from the arm to the point and from the point to the bottom of the gusset. It's a good idea to pin this well. If you have some extra fabric here, see there's a little left over, pinch it well, grab the back, grab this part and stretch. And then you'll end just right. Now you have your little arm. Put it inside out. Or inside in, technically. Grab the top, measure your shoulder, just like with the other one. But instead of sewing it flat, we're sewing it in the round. And instead of sewing the arm on the outside, we're sewing it on the inside. Again, find your shoulder line. Put your arm on the inside and pin. And starting at the right hand side, leave again a seam allowance. Stick your needle in where you want it. There. And we're going to go all the way around in one go. have it. 2 arms. And as you can see, they look near identical. This one you don't have to sew in the round, which is a lot less intimidating, but I find that I have to pay more attention to make sure that the seam allowance, well, the allowances for the seam allowance is just in the right place. This one, a lot of them, they go in one go, so they tend to be a little bit more clean. The body gores are fairly easy to make. They are cut out of a triangular. You first sew the 2 verticals together, so the bias cut is at the edge. Making sure you have this seam towards you, facing you, just as you have these. It's a matter of pinning them in place. In a non-stretched manner. Don't stretch the bias cut. Make sure it's not folded either. Come up, there you go. I find it a lot easier working with bias cuts if I hem them after I sew them in place. Okay, and now I put it in at the seam allowance. Go all the way down. I like to put a little bit of stretch on. You saw how it was running away from me? That's because my machine has a advancer at the bottom, not at the top. And there's stretch at the top, but not at the bottom. So that's why the bias is always a bit of a challenge to work with. And we pin this in place. Hi, Moose. There. This one I go from the bottom to top. Look well and end at the seam. Perfect. And then there's a little bit of an opening in here, so you go for fold it together. Find the end, stick in your needle. Oops. There. This machine doesn't have a slow setting, so it's always a bit of a rush, 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 stop. It's just the way it is. There. And you do that at the other end. And the needle right on that, on this seam. Yep. Determine where you're going to, so you know when to stop. And again, there's a little opening in there, a little gap, so flatten all your seams. Stick in the needle, see where you're going. If you can't see, put in the needle. Try and avoid sewing over needles or pins. They don't always break your needle, but they might chip the point of the needle in such a way that the needle after that grabs the fibers of your fabric and tears them when it goes through. That's not a good thing. So now you've got everything in. And like I said, I like to hem at the end. Stick your arm to the inside, makes it a little easier. And you're welcome to hem all straight sides, straight cuts beforehand. Straight cuts doesn't matter, but especially if you're beginning, it's much easier to hem the bias cuts after you assemble them. Oh, you use zigzag. Go right over or at the edge, so you catch as much of the yarns as you can. You don't want the fiber to fray. The good thing beforehand is to go through and pull out everything that's loose and gently clip that off, so it's not poking you in the armpit when you first wear it. And there you go. Put it right way out. You'll see what a cute little tunic I made. Look, isn't it cute? So next up is making a little opening for the head. And then it's time to, well, hem the bottom. I'm not really going to finish this because this is not really going to be used, obviously, but that would be the last one. Hem the bottom. I and finish all the visible seams by hand.